if you're just doing a job just for a check and it may go away, how do you pivot to doing what you actually want to do and you're passionate about? As you guys mentioned, this is a crisis, but out of all crises or crises come opportunity. New businesses will be created, new industries will be created, even just new nonsense will be created. People come up with new things that they're just interested in to waste time. And I'm not dissing anybody, but the Ashton Hall thing, people are now buying Saratoga water and squeezing lemons and dipping their face in bowls. There's going to be some other craze like that during the recession, if we have one. There's going to be so many opportunities. So me, and I think everybody else out there, you should be coming up with your own business plan. Make sure you're doing the things that you want to do and not just things you have to do.
Right.
I think all of us have to come up with our personal business plan. We got to think about what happens if we face a recession. It's not just about saving money. It's just, what do you pivot to? Right now, if you're just doing a job just for a check and it may go away, how do you pivot to doing what you actually want to do and you're passionate about? As you guys mentioned, this is a crisis, but out of all crises or crises come opportunity. New businesses will be created, new industries will be created, even just new nonsense will be created. People come up with new things that they're just interested in to waste time. And I'm not dissing anybody, but the Ashton Hall thing, people are now buying Saratoga water and squeezing lemons and dipping their face in bowls. There's going to be some other craze like that during the recession, if we have one. There's going to be so many opportunities. So and I think everybody else out there, you should be coming up with your own business plan. Make sure you're doing the things that you want to do and not just things you have to do.
Right.
Good morning and welcome to Let It Be Known. I am your host, Stacy Brown, and this is the morning show for BlackPressUSA.com.
Peace and love. I'm Niele, your co-pilot. And of course, we're going to break down the headlines that are impacting and uplifting the Black experience this morning. I got a side hustle or two.
I heard. Well, you need it. You gotta have it.
Yeah.
I was talking to somebody yesterday who works for the BBC network, and she was saying, that she's put in for this other gig that they have, and basically to be a team leader and stuff, and and she said that this actually would free up more time for her to do some other things. So folks are trying to be creative too, and having, as you say, side hustles.
Right. And, the days of the past where you have a 9-to-5, you work 30 years, you have a 401k plan. Those days are just not there. People don't stay on jobs that long. And this new generation, they want to govern themselves. And so times have changed. 401k plans are out. And from what I'm hearing in the stock market, those that have retirement plans are worried today.
They are very worried. Yeah, exactly. And, I saw something too. It talks about the third rail of politics being Social Security. They've been touching that rail now for a little bit now, and they're going to continue to do that. And people, so you want to take away 401ks, the stock market, on purpose. The president continues to crash the stock market, and which directly affects your 401ks. And then you want to take away their Social Security. Where are we going with this?
He just wants to have all the power and just have us out here struggling.
David says that the 401ks have crashed, and next is Social Security. So it is so interesting. And then these tariffs, we're going to talk a little bit later about the tariffs. We have a guest to talk about the impact of tariffs on women in particular. So be interested to hear what our guest has to say about that. Reverend Al Sharpton.
Well, before we do that, let's get the pop question out the way.
What's the pop? Yeah.
The pop quiz. I said the pop question, the Black History pop quiz. Let's get that out.
Black History pop quiz question of the day. What is it? Come on, drum roll.
Drum roll, Greer.
Uh-oh. She is she's moving a little behind.
Okay, let's jump into your first story.
Let's go into our first story while we wait for the question of the day. The Reverend Al Sharpton. Now, we know that this past Saturday, when all the folks were out there protesting, the Black folks were doing their line dancing and getting their nails did and all that stuff. And with the fans, yeah. Well, Reverend Al Sharpton has decided that they're going to march on Wall Street. And they've set a date for the summertime, late in the summer at that, August the 28th. They plan, and Sharpton says that his organization will continue to fight to protect diversity, equity, and inclusion policies. And this announcement comes as Pepsi Cola Company has been given 3 weeks by Sharpton to reinstate its DEI commitments or face a national boycott. Now, you know, I've never been a big fan of Al Sharpton, right? But the one thing I have been a fan of with him is he's in your face. And I like the part where he says, Pepsi, you got 3 weeks. So it's like, in other words, we're not playing around here. I think you got to do that. I think we talked about, it's like Reverend Jamal Bryant, the 40-day fast. I mean, he put a thing on it, right? You got to let these people know I'm not one to play with. And Sharpton, you know, love him or hate him, you know, he tends to get results.
Well, I mean, he didn't get strong results when inauguration day happened, and he did a march on Dr. King's birthday in protest to the Trump inauguration. Wasn't a lot of people said, why are you doing that, not showing up? And then I see a lot of questioning of why Pepsi, and where are these meetings happening where they're deciding who they're going to boycott and when? Was there any consultation with Pastor Jamal Bryant, being that he is effectively leading a movement to, to protest different corporations? You know, why are we working together? That's my question. I'm not saying it's good or bad. My question is, why aren't we mobilizing? And why isn't the Black leaders showing a unified front? So now that it's like Jamal Bryant is with him saying, now we're moving from Target to Pepsi. You know, this just seems so random to me. And it doesn't seem like it is a cohesive and a collaborative effort. It's just like, okay, that's going good. So now I want to be at the forefront of this one. I feel like we're not making impact because we're not mobilizing, as leadership is not mobilizing and collaborating together. That's just my take.
Yeah, I hear exactly what you're saying. And I'm not sure, maybe you've heard differently from Jamal Bryant. I think his thing was Target. I did not hear that he had somebody else in mind. Probably he does, but I don't know that he's made that public or not. Maybe he has. Sharpton has, again, I certainly don't want to sit here and be an advocate about Al Sharpton, but I got what he did with Costco. I understood. Some people said they didn't understand it. I felt like I understood what he was doing with Costco. Support those who support you. Pepsi, like Target, like others, Goldman Sachs, you name, have rolled back or stopped their DE&I programs in their companies. So Sharpton decides to pick Pepsi. Why he decides to pick Pepsi after Target, I don't know. I don't think you should pick anybody until you've made some headway with Target. What you have been able to do with Target is beat them up financially. They have been absolutely beaten up financially. They haven't been crushed, which to me should be the end goal, unless and until they decide to come to their senses. So I think I'm a little bit with you on that too. This idea of jumping from one to the other without a resolution on one,
or not even just a resolution, but a collaborative effort. When we look back at the civil rights movement, it was a collaborative effort. You know, bus boycott. Now we're going here. Now I just see like all of these different leaders, which our next story we're going to get into. Like everybody is just trying to do something. But we're not doing it together. And one of the lessons that we should have learned coming out of the civil rights movement is that we're better together. One of the lessons we learned out of the Black Lives Matter movement, we are better together. Even the Black Lives Matter movement, civil rights attorneys came aboard, the Black church came aboard, Black leadership came aboard, Congressional Black Caucus came aboard. where is the cohesiveness and the collaboration in this Trump resistance movement within the Black community? Now, we're unified on our line dancing and fans, okay? Everybody got that memo. We understand it and we moving. But with this over here, I just don't see the togetherness.
Yeah, well, before I say what I was going to say, let me just tell you about a couple of comments here. Dr. Joni 2 says, I think Coca-Cola has been vocal about keeping DE&I. That's my only idea about insisting Pepsi do the same. She says, they're not ending the Target boycott, so they're just adding to it. Random is good. David Youngblood says they don't know who's next. And RNG, of course, doesn't shop at Target and don't drink Pepsi. He's just waiting for the Walmart boycott.
Easy boycott for you, RNG, huh? Because you don't participate anyway.
And he also, RNG says only about 30% of Black people participated in the civil rights movement. But and that kind of jives with what I was going to say. Sort of. I have this idea in my head that, and I could be totally wrong, but I have this idea that Black folks as a whole, after the civil rights movement, had made a decision or come to this conclusion that they wouldn't have to do that again.
I agree 100%. That's the problem.
And so now you have, all of these different folks like Sharpton, like Jamal Bryant, like the NAACP, and everyone else doing their own thing and not understanding how to come together. During the civil rights movement, and Jim Crow, you had no choice. Not only did you not have a choice, but it was very convenient too, because we all lived together. We all lived in the same neighborhood. So it was a lot easier in that sense. I'm not saying that, of course, the struggle was the struggle, but it was easier to get people together, to be on the same page. Now it's, and then money is involved. Money was probably not involved in the civil rights movement, certainly not like it is today. And I think that folks, these leaders, they are used to getting a check, and nobody wants to sacrifice a check.
But I mean, let's fast forward. I think if the cause and the person is right, like I said, Black Lives Matter was something that we all found a way to rally for. Barack Obama, everybody jumped on board. So
everybody jumped on board publicly, but because you remember, and I hate to call them out on this, but you remember there was some backbiting and backstabbing. Remember Jesse Jackson on MSNBC with the hot mic?
Yeah, Tavis Smiley, Dr. Cornel West. But I'm saying in totality, to your point of civil rights, looking at different movements. Barack Obama was a movement that stimulated Black folks. Black Lives Matter was a movement that stimulated Black folks. What I think everybody is looking for, Kamala Harris, almost did it. I think what we're looking for and what folks are looking for is that. And I see, Jamal Bryant, I want to see a more unified message within our leadership. And we can move on to Congress right now. Like, where is the unified movement? We saw Cory Booker last week do something. Now we see
what I said.
Now we see Hakeem Jeffries, he's like, I'm not about to filibuster and stand on the floor, but I'm a challenge House Speaker Mike Johnson. And I'm just not sure that's going to move the needle.
Right. What did she put in the thumbnail on that about talk is cheap or whatever? What did she have up there? I want to talk. Yeah, talk is cheap. This idea. Is
that going to make us rally behind Hakeem? Is that going to make us rally behind Democrats?
I could care less about you debating MAGA Mike. I don't think many people, that's like you said, that's not going to move the needle. So you're going to debate him to what end? You probably could, make him look small in a debate, but that's not an accomplishment. And they don't care. MAGA Mike doesn't care. He's never going to say, oh, he beat me in a debate, so let me give in. He's not going to say that. First of all, no matter how bad Hakeem might beat him in a debate, MAGA Mike and MAGA crew is going to claim victory. right? They have never conceded to anything that was true. So what's the point of this? Is what I'm saying.
Right.
What is the point?
And I think the worst thing for minority speaker Jeffries is to be ignored. And I think that might happen to him. It's just to be ignored. Like it's not even
Well,
relevant to MAGA. It's not
well,
relevant to
it's
them.
not. It's not
It's
because
not
no matter what you
important.
write, listen. When you got them ignoring court orders, what makes you come on? And Trump and Jasmine Crockett is the messenger. She was online yesterday and she broke down that, you talk about the Department of Government Efficiency and you're supposed to be saving this money. But this man has spent this past weekend golfing again while everybody's suffering. The golfing alone has already, and he's only been in office 3 months, it's already cost taxpayers almost $30 million. Right? So this idea of let's have a floor debate, what are you debating? It's nothing to debate. Hakeem?
But even to your point of saying where Donald Trump was this weekend, where you had they say close to 5 million people globally protesting hands off. He was golfing. I mean, that was his response to the uproar. Doesn't matter. So,
Well, he also, let's put it in perspective, though. He had the Saudi government and Saudi billionaires there giving him all this money. So,
doesn't matter. Yeah, he was building a higher fence around the White House, because there are reports that there more fencing going up. He's golfing. People are protesting. Hakeem Jeffries, did the Congressional Black Caucus have a conversation? And are they strategically saying, okay, what is our next move from the Senate to the House? How are we doing this? Or is it just like Jasmine's over here? We got Cory Booker over here with his staff thinking of this. Hakeem Jeffries is over here. Like, what is going on? Where is the leadership?
Right. I really believe that not all of them. Certainly, we always talk about Jasmine Crockett and even Bernie Sanders and AOC and Max Frost. They're doing their thing, right? But I really believe that as a whole, and we could have asked your girl this yesterday, but as a whole, I think the party they're looking at these little wins that they've got in Wisconsin, for instance, and they're seeing the unhappiness of people. I think they are holding their breath and holding their nose, waiting for the midterms. And I think that it's just really insane. Idea. It's a absolutely horrible idea because by that time, when the midterms roll around, late next year, everything is done. It's going to be too late for anything. Right. If you're not doing anything now, and they'll argue, "Oh, we're going to court." He's ignoring your court orders.
Right. And I was going to get to this a little later in the show, but I think it's the perfect time to bring up. You were talking about waiting to the midterms. Well, in this month alone, there's over 38,000 seats on the ballot this month alone. And I think yesterday when we were talking to political strategist Jasmine Canick, she was talking about know your zip codes. Local elections are important. We talked about how it was the school boards that made this critical race theory, Black history conversation swell in the nation. And we see what's happening from the Smithsonian African American Museum to just pulling. We had this week, they took Harriet Tubman out and put her back in. That started with elections at school boards, critical race theory. So if we have over 38,000 seats on the ballot, and this is coming from Michelle Obama's When We All Vote. That's where I put the statistic from. 38,000 seats from state legislators to local elections to mayors. And we're trying to just sit and wait for the midterms?
Yeah.
Bad idea.
Nancy Wall as Nancy Wall says, the Supreme Court has already given Trump a blanket pass to dismantle the Constitution piece by piece, and they know that. Hakeem Jeffries knows that. It's like, what are you doing? We always heard. I think you mentioned this. Somebody mentioned this just recently, maybe even yesterday. We always hear about this Democrat talk about this Republican being his friend. They have, you know, these relationships or whatever. When are you going to leverage these relationships to the point where you are able to pull enough of the Republicans on your side to say, wait a minute, this has gone way too far. We got to stop.
When are you just gonna stop having these wasted conversation with these Republicans that are going to agree with you in the offices,
In the office,
but when they come to the floor, they are not going to go against Donald Trump? When are you going to say enough and call them out instead of saying, well, they might be an ally later on? Like, you brought up Lonnie Bunch, the secretary of the Smithsonian, is waiting for the Republicans to do the right thing. I'm scared of that. Waiting on who?
You know, obviously Lonnie Bunch deserves the utmost respect.
Love him.
But the thing, this idea of waiting for them to do the right thing, it's like, are you kidding me? You know, the ship be sinking is what Michael Ray Richardson, the great New York Knick, once said. The ship be sinking. And it's like, are you kidding me?
It's like the slaves waiting on master, and Harriet Tubman say, you better run. You better run. Waiting on master, you better run.
Yeah. And this is, again, this is why, as horrible, disgusting as these MAGA folks are, I always, these doggone Democrats as a group are so spineless and gutless, and they have no backbone, no fight, no will. You know, it's like, get out of the way. This is where you got to say, get out of the way and let those who do have a spine, let them do what they do. And it's not many of them, apparently, not many of them that have a spine.
Right. And going back to how we started the conversation, you know, I'm definitely for protesting Wall Street, although wait until August, you know, a lot of things could happen before August. So that's a long time.
Why August 28th, the end of the summer too? What's happening at the end of the summer that's not happening? I mean, whatever's happening now, by August 28th, it's going to be infinitely worse.
Right. So I'm for that. I'm just like, can we get y'all in a room and come up with an agenda? Close the door. We need Pastor Jamal Bryant, you know, because he has showed leadership. I like what Reverend Otis Moss is doing over at Trinity. You know, I like what Freddie Haynes is doing if we're talking about the church. I want to see some Congressional Black Caucus members. We know that the people love Jasmine Crockett. So you can't just pick the people that you have to pick the people that are also resonating with pop culture, right? So we know Jasmine Crockett, the people listen to her. You might want to throw Joy Reid in that room because people miss her. You know what I'm saying? You might want to put Angela Ryan there and the Native Pop people because they have State of the People. You know, you want to put the Black press in the room because you need us to put the message out. You know,
civil rights, we use the Black press during the civil rights movement.
You know, come on, can we get a meeting in the room and have a plan? What's the plan, folks?
Yeah. Here's the Black Pop quiz. I was the first Black female news anchor in Nashville and used the name Janet Lee on air to avoid audience backlash. I know this one. I'm smart.
Okay, good. Okay, I have to think. I'm not gonna Google. I'm not this time. I'm not, but I will. Ain't nothing wrong with a Google chat. Okay, we want to play. If you want to play, engage how you can.
Put your answers in the chat. We want to know the first Black female news anchor in Nashville and use the name Janet Lee on air to avoid audience backlash. Very cool.
I'm Googling right now.
Oh gosh. David Youngblood says Oprah Winfrey. Anyway, you know, so some states Democratic-led states, by the way, and cities are pushing back on Trump's threat to cut education funding over the DE&I programs. State leaders in Minnesota and New York said they will not comply with an education department in order to gather signatures from local school systems certifying compliance with civil rights, including the rejection of what the government calls illegal DE&I practices.
Right.
Also, Chicago's mayor has promised to sue over any cuts. California and Vermont told schools they don't need to respond. So, you know, so I talked about the backbone and stuff. So there is a little pushback, but it has to be, like you said, everybody has to be in the room.
But see, the smart part about this, the states, when we talk about K through 12 and community college, most of the education fundings come from the state. So they really don't need federal government money because the states really control the budget for education. So they can push back. So so this is how you know where your power is and you use it. And so that's a smart thing. And it's the easy way to resist Donald Trump. I'm glad that they're doing it. But now they're saying the universities are the ones that lean more on federal grants. That's why you see all of these university institutions, you know, pulling back from DEI because they need that federal money. States don't need it so much.
Yeah, and by the way, Orangey says when he becomes a journalist, he will use the name Mandingo. So there you have it. Tariffs don't hit everyone the same. Women, especially those heading households, they bear the brunt. From clothes to childcare essentials, rising costs stack up real fast, Niele. For instance, in 2022, the tariff rate for women's apparel was nearly 17% higher than for men. It's an invisible tax. No one sees coming until it's already emptied their wallet. It's a tax on working women. 9 to 5 is a national movement for women. It fights for economic justice and voices too often left out of the conversation. Joining us now is the co-president and CEO of 9 to 5, Mica Whitfield. How you doing, Mica?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us. So let's just jump right into it. Appreciate you jumping on. Let it be known. How do tariffs directly impact working women, particularly those of limited financial means?
Yeah, so we know that most of our working women, especially single-headed household, 1 in 3 of them are already in poverty, right? And so when you add on tariffs to an already slim margin, that is going to impact them most directly. So they're making decisions about at the gas pump, they're making decisions about groceries already, and we already know rent is high. So these tariffs are just a tax on working people, especially working women.
So these tariffs, obviously, they affect the day-to-day lives of women. And when you really think about it, we always talk about the assault on people of color by this administration, but we can't leave out all women that this administration has really gone after. But these tariffs, talk about what you're doing, 9 to 5, that is, to bring more awareness to the gendered impact of tariffs and trade policy.
Yeah. So I'm sure you've heard of the pink tax before. And so the pink tax is, women paying 3% more on just services and products that are targeted towards them. So everything from razors, deodorant to menstrual products, all of those things. So now we can think of it as the pink tariff, right? Because we're already paying more, right, with smaller margins. And so now these tariffs then add on to that. And so then we have a lot of our families who are in one or other situations. Either they are the consumer or they are the producer. And so a lot of our folks, we work with childcare providers, all of them Black and brown women, right, that are providing care in their homes, or some of them do have childcare facilities, and all the prices for the things that they need to buy, toys and accessories for their childcare facilities, diapers, wipes, things that they need in order to care for families those prices are going to go up. And we know childcare already costs so much for families. So as a consumer, they're going to feel it on that end. And then as a consumer, as a producer, they're also feeling it on that end. And so we have also women that are entrepreneurs. They in the hair industry, maybe they make beauty products, right? They're already trying to figure out where they're going to find new sources for the plastic for their hair care products, right? And so that they don't have to pass as many costs over to the consumers, which are Black and brown women just like them. And so now they're right in this place, and this ultimately could be closing doors for Black and brown women entrepreneurs, who are the Black women, the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs, who are already struggling with capital in the first place, right, to get their business up and going. If they run a business like childcare, there are so many loopholes and things that they need in order to stay consistent with the state. And so there are already challenges stacked against them. So this is kind of like that Jenga piece that can really bring the whole tower down, for families and for the providers.
I thought it was so important and excited to have you on the show today, because we know at midnight, Trump's tariffs went into effect, which is expected to have a huge impact on our economy. And then you look at states like I'm in California, and you heard Governor Gavin Newsom say that he was going to actually look to countries to do his own trade. California is the 5th largest economy in the world. So when you hear these types of conversations, does it mean that people should start looking to states that are, trying to negotiate their own tariffs with other countries to get their goods and services now because of what Trump is doing?
Yeah, I think those are absolutely options right now. I think for folks in states like we work in Georgia, I'm based in Georgia, that may or may not be an option, right? For our local economy, for our governor, right? And so we know that the states have been slow, especially red states have been slower to, respond to the administration and to stand up against the administration. And so for our people that are in states like Georgia, in states like we also work out in Wisconsin, and that are already dealing with those, just last week, there was a race in Wisconsin, and folks did stand up, right? And we were part of doing a lot of voter work for that. However, we're seeing resistance, and we'll continue to do that level of resistance and look towards states like you mentioned, like California, that are trying to figure out ways to do things to make sure that their local state governments are able to continue to run, and that the people that power the states, right, the working people that power the states, are not feeling this burden even more.
Yeah, I'm going to get to some of the major policy wins you guys have had in Georgia, speaking of Georgia, but I want to throw this up. One of our viewers is saying this based on your last response, is the guest suggesting that the cost of items for children only fall on women. Can you clarify?
Of course, yeah. So of course, on families overall, right? And then particularly, we know that women, head of household women, that falling on them more. But absolutely, families as a whole are feeling it, and are going to feel it.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I mentioned, your work has led to some major policy wins in Georgia. You talk about a red state. Do you see a path for similar wins at the federal level regarding economic justice and trade?
That's a good question, Stacy. We have, with our issues are workplace justice issues, paid leave, child care, workplace harassment and discrimination. And, recently in the last 5 to 10 years, we've been expanding that work around, climate and even housing, because we knew our folks, they live in communities, they live these intersectional lives. And so organizing work and policy wins we've gone through a lot of cycles. Of course, we've had many eras where it's not going to happen in the state. And so we need to focus on the federal, right? Things like paid leave. We won paid leave at the ballot in states like Colorado, right? Because we knew that could happen there. Now, doing that work in a southern state is a bit different, and there's not even an option to do that at the ballot. And so then, during a few years ago, we were thinking that let's do it at the federal. It'll happen there. And so I think right now we're in a space where we're strategizing and figuring out where is the place to do this, and looking back to the state work for sure, because the federal, again, that landscape is not it doesn't look beneficial for us right now. So, the strategy is constantly shifting depending on what's happening, right? And so we try to really focus our work at 9 to 5 on, of course, our work is grassroots. So beginning in both state and local level communities. And we've done federal work for sure. But in the last few years, we've been really focused on state and local races and state and local work, because we know that's where we can see the most direct impact for our folks. And we want our members, our working women members, to have 9 to 5 as their political home, right? So they can ask, and we're C3, but they can ask those questions. They can figure out what a local commissioner race is and what that person will do. So we've been focusing more so in those spaces, and we've been able to see wins there. And I think that will probably continue to be our strategy moving forward.
Yeah, we talked a lot yesterday about knowing your zip code and how local elections really they really are about the shift on what happens on a national level. And so when you're looking at your organization and looking at key, races, like you brought up commissioners, we know the school boards, we know there are lots of local positions that help women of color. What are some of the key races or positions that you see Black women or women of color should be running for to help, amplify the work that you do?
Yeah, I think definitely local spots, everything from school board. Quite a few of our folks are members that are also local elected officials. We some of our folks that even work within the organization, have seats on the school board, on city commission, city council, just depend, on where they are. So those are areas where we see folks can have direct impact. And it makes a lot of sense. Locally in Southwest Georgia and Albany, Georgia, we've been focused on light bills, right? And that's as a part of climate, because folks there were having light bills as high as their rent. And so,
wonderful.
So one thing that we've been doing is focusing on, who impacts that light bill, right? Like letting folks know what the Public Service Commissioner race does, right? But then also, more locally to Albany, Georgia and Southwest Georgia, what seats on the local city commission impact the Albany utilities. And then, there are races for the Albany Utilities Board. And so keeping people looped in on those. And again, our work is C3. But we try to make sure folks are seeing the connections and seeing where running for a certain position would put them in a position to be able to make those types of decisions.
And Mica, what would you say to people who believe tariffs are a distant or an abstract issue for everyday Americans?
I would say tariffs sound abstract, but they really are a working people's issue. That's where the burden is going to fall directly. There's some people that are not going to feel it, but if your paychecks are being stretched and you're making decisions, this is going to impact you. We were putting together some numbers, and I believe it said the average cost would be $3,800 a year for families. That's about $300 a month. That's a serious impact on families that are already stretched. So, it's not abstract. We've been doing, over the years, a lot of, tax issues and, educating our folks around tax issues. And it's not sexy. And these abstract economic policies never sound sexy, and they're hard to explain. But, this one really, gets straight to the point. It's going to impact your pockets. So, yeah. And we have to be prepared for that.
Well, it is going to affect everybody's pockets, and it's really I find it very interesting when we got in contact with you guys that there is an organization like yours, 9 to 5, that really takes to heart the issues affecting women in general. Because again, we quote Malcolm X a lot. the Black woman is, the most disrespected, et cetera, et cetera. And to have you, and I know your colleagues work as hard as you do, but to have you guys at the forefront of this, and to know more about 9 to 5 is really, I think it's phenomenal. And with that said, can you tell folks a little bit more about 9 to 5? Many may not have heard of you.
Yeah. So interesting enough, our work was actually born out of Boston. And originally there were a group of organizers who were organized as secretary workers that were tired of their bosses, be in workplace harassment and all of those things. So the movie 9 to 5 was actually inspired by that group of workers. So
Right.
Dolly Parton, Lily Tomlin, those are our roots. Now, fast forward 51 years later, my co-president and I, Ashley Pinelli, are the first Black women to run the organization. And we, I would say over the last several years, though, have been focused primarily on organizing Black and brown women, right? So our roots, of course, have been in worker justice, but we know now in this current climate that that is specifically focused on folks that are doing that care work, folks that are doing low wage jobs, and that's often Black and brown women. And so we know our history of who we are and how we started, and this is who we are now. And our work continues.
Yeah.
Do you have a website? I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Yes. Our website is 9to5.org, the number 9to5.org. And there you can see what states we're in. We have chapters in Colorado, Wisconsin, and Georgia. And we also, have a larger national network as well. But that's where we're on the ground. And we're running campaigns around childcare, workplace harassment and discrimination. We are doing a lot of voter work. Those are some photos of our folks out in Colorado. So it's primarily just a network of women that are working on a plethora of workplace and economic justice issues.
Yeah, I was going to mention that someone mentioned in the chat, instead of using the word tariffs, just say taxes, so more people can understand it. This is a tax, and I'm sure you've probably gotten questions about what does a tariff mean? What exactly is a tariff? But it's a tax.
Yeah, ultimately, yes, it is a tax. And so we do a lot of know your rights trainings, and like I said, mentioned, just doing political education trainings overall. So that is, what we're working into to help folks understand, what these tariffs mean, what impact that they'll have, and just explaining it a bit more for our members.
You brought up childcare, and we know that the federal government is looking to gut Head Start, which will. Can you talk about the impact that will have, especially on communities of color, if they gut Head Start?
Yeah. And childcare, including programs like Head Start, are already deeply underfunded, right? So even before this administration and all of these things happen, we've been fighting on the state level just for adequate funding for, things like Head Start, but also CAPS, the assistance program for families that need childcare, right? These programs have always been limited. There are so many children that are on the rolls that just cannot even get access to childcare, right? Because Head Start, is a little bit later, but some folks, need that good childcare prior to Head Start even. So making sure that there's adequate funds in the state budget. Now, of course, they do get federal dollars into the state budget for these programs, but making sure there's adequate funds for this. And so we know there's millions of children that are not able to get on the rolls, even though they qualify. And so we're already starting from a deficit as it relates to there. And then to scrap the programs altogether or to have them run on a shoestring program, that means that so many of our children are not getting the early learning that they need to start school successfully, right? And how many of them are already, that is the opportunity. Their families need to work, right? And parents are really busy. And so Head Start in these programs, of course, not only are nutrition programs, right, but they're also, beginner programs so that our children go to school ready to learn, that they have all the skills that they need. And so it really, gutting these programs ultimately impacts so many children, but particularly Black and brown children, because, other families can afford to still put their children in Head Start type programs, right? And very pricey preschool programs. And so now that begins another generation of our children that are set back completely.
Well, before we let you go, I have to ask you this. And first of all, I see the sign behind you saying "Gifted in Black." Really like that.
Yeah, it says young gifted in Black.
Okay, there you go. There's a winning combination right there. How did you get your start in this advocacy type work that you do? What was the impetus for you?
For me, I started this work doing public health. Well, even before that, I'll say that I was a preteen at the Million Women March in Philly. I'm from Philly, and so my mother took me there, and I remember the feeling I felt there. And, wanting to be able to do, social justice work and to do advocacy. And so I started this work in public health, primarily working with women that were newly diagnosed with HIV. And I was doing that work for some time. And I found then that most of those women found out their status while they were pregnant. And also the impact that economics had on your health, right? And even your diagnosis. And so I worked in public health for many years. I worked in with the Black maternal mortality crisis even. And so more and more, I was just seeing the intersection of economics as it related to Black women's health and their overall well-being from their zip code. All of these things impacted their health. And so I began to do some work particularly around Pregnancy Workers Fairness Act with 9 to 5, and got connected with 9 to 5 directly and was able to kind of bring this intersection for me, full circle for me, around, Black women's health all the way to our economic well-being. So.
Wow. Okay. Well, Mica Whitfield, the co-president and CEO of 9 to 5. We really appreciate you joining the Black Presses Let It Be Known. It's really great information. We need that information.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Very important topic. It is a tax, as they say. We want to call it a tax. And the work that they're doing at 9 to 5, folks, look them up and let's support them as well.
Stacy, the reason why I asked her about the child care is because I was reading an article and it was saying by September 1st, 2025, every student in China will be required to learn AI starting in primary school, mandated from just 6 years of age. Wow. And so, we're talking about Head Start, but we're looking at countries that are training kids as young as 6 years old to be ready for the world. AI. And it's like our education system needs a lot of advancement if we're training the next generations to compete.
Right. And that's the other diabolical thing about what the Trump administration is doing, because he will get up on his his platform soapbox and talk about the US competing, especially he has this thing with China. Mm-hmm. Right. And you just talked about what they're doing with the kids there. Yet you are doing everything you can to make sure that America is, they had that saying way back in the 80s under Reagan, the dumbing down of America. You're making sure that Americans start off behind the 8 ball. You are clinching that. Mm-hmm. So it's wow, it's crazy. We do have a teaser for our Black Pop quiz of the day. So let's get the tease. What's the tease? What are you going to tease us with, Greer? In 1998, I lost $2.7 million because I publicly stated I would never eat another burger.
Maybe it is Oprah Winfrey. Who said that?
Not eating a burger cost you about $3 million. Yeah, it's Oprah Winfrey.
It has to be Oprah. You got it right,
I was the
girl.
first
You
black
did that.
female news anchor. Because how many black? I mean, who makes that kind of money? I mean, Robin Roberts does now, but tag on it. Use the name Janet Leigh on air to avoid audience backlash. But I also thought Oprah started not in that. Yeah, maybe she did start in Nashville. I think she started somewhere else. But nonetheless, it's looking more and more like Oprah. Oprah had a $3 million. She didn't eat a $3 million cheeseburger.
She always gets in trouble with this weight loss thing. It was if it's her, it was a burger. Then it was Weight Watchers, but we don't know if it's Oprah yet. So good teaser. Okay, let's jump into our Let It Be Known quickies for today. And here's something to watch, family. Measles outbreaks are on the rise. Now in Texas, outbreaks near 500 cases as viruses spread among daycare kids. And dozens of states, including New Mexico, Oklahoma, Kansas, California, and even Washington, D.C., Stacy, are dealing with cases of measles. And the CDC and Health and Human Services have been pretty much quiet about this, and we know why. Because there's nobody in the office, because he didn't fire everybody.
and the fact that they picked the most unqualified DE&I people there ever was to run these departments. So nonetheless, here we go.
Right. And Duke basketball star could face deportation under Trump ruling against South Sudan. And so this is at risk for all colleges following Trump's new visa policy. Colleges across the U.S. from Duke to UCLA are raising the alarm as international students face sudden visa revoctions. Yeah. And so
what more can you say about this stuff? It's just ridiculous.
Yeah. So now you have NCAA players that are affected by this. This is where you'll see, alumni, especially at PWIs, they like their sports teams. They love their college basketball, football. So let's see how they're going to respond when, things are impacting their dollars and their bottom lines. Maybe that'll make the Republicans and shake them up a little bit.
Nah, they'll just like the slave owners. The one slave dies, they breed some more.
They'll get another one. All right. And finally, we talked about elections a little bit earlier, but we didn't touch on it, but it's been a headline for a few days. Keisha Lance Bottoms has announced her run for governor of Georgia. So that'll be interesting. I don't know if Stacey Abrams had any desire to run again. I don't think she did. But this should be interesting to see if Keisha Lance Bottoms can actually make this happen. And then over, up north in Michigan, Rep. John James, who is a Trump loyalist, has announced his bid to become the first Black governor of Michigan.
Okay. Wow.
And that's interesting because Motor City is a black town. Detroit is a black town, but he's MAGA. He's MAGA. But I'm just saying, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
He can't use that card. He can't. We can't credit him. He can't be the first black.
He might need to be on the black card revote list.
Listen. There is plenty of room for him.
There's plenty of room
people
for him.
like him. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And just to reiterate what we were saying earlier, like I said, there's over 38,000 seats on the ballot this month alone, folks. In the month of April, from mayor, state legislator, city council, school board, and even judges. Something we talked about yesterday. They're all on the ballot this month. So know your zip code. Local election turnout is traditionally low. people just don't show up for local elections. So, change starts in our family, and then it goes to our neighborhood, our community, state, and nation. So if you know there's an election out, and just let your community know about what's happening so we can start changing what's happening in our country.
So you already got some predictions on these elections. Mike V says he'd be curious to see who will be Keisha Lance, her lieutenant governor running mate. And the individual who posted under what was said says Keisha's going to waste everybody's time and money. Atlanta didn't. Ooh, shade. And Mike is saying too that John James versus Lieutenant Governor Gilchrist is no contest. It's Garland all day. So
okay, I love it. Let's start these conversations and get involved in local politics and state politics, because once we make it interesting, then people will pay more attention to it. So I love that. I love it.
Well, okay, so who is well, wait, before I get to that, because he mentioned that earlier, in New Orleans do have a mayoral race, and they're calling it, I know Orange has referred to it as the battle for gentrification. So it's one to watch there in New Orleans, because New Orleans, if that breaks the other way for New Orleans is going to look entirely different really soon.
Mayor Cantrell is there now. Isn't that the mayor right now?
Cantrell, right?
Yeah, Cantrell.
Right.
Yeah, I like her.
You do?
I do. I like her. She came out here to LA. There's a district, the Jefferson district, where the iconic Harold and Bells is. Interestingly enough, a lot of migrants from New Orleans, even Mr. Bakewell, Danny Bakewell, his family kind of started in that area when his father first came here. And so they renamed it. I think it was New Orleans Square, and she came out. And it was just a Mardi Gras time on Jefferson Avenue a couple years ago. And she was just a nice lady, and she was just amplifying the love and the spirit of New Orleans here in LA. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, he says she's been term limited. So she's actually has to leave the office. So
okay, interesting.
Yeah, so that is so it is really interesting. We'll see what happens. It's something that people will be talking about too, because so much of this stuff is going on. Let's get to the black card. Who's losing their black card today? And it's Linda Polk. Now, who is Linda Polk? Linda Polk is a caregiver who was arrested. Now, this is awful, awful, awful. She was arrested after she allegedly removed an elderly man in her care from life support and stole his money. What kind of soap opera, all my children, days of our lives nonsense is that?
You got to add the new soap opera, Beyond the Gates, the new NAACP CBS soap opera, Beyond the Gates. Add that one too.
Only reason I know about those, my grandmother watched them religiously. So, but my gosh, this woman, she they said she met her victim for the first time in 2021 when she started providing in-home care for his wife. 3 years later, she did the same for the victim when he became seriously ill and was eventually hospitalized and placed on life support. She obtained fraudulent power of attorney over the victim and instructed the hospital to have the victim taken off life support. She allegedly embezzled a large sum of money from the victim and opened and used credit cards in his name. So this Linda Polk, not only is she going to prison, but she's going without her black card.
What a dummy. You opened up credit cards in his name? What a dummy.
Wait, how you pull the plug on the man? You mobster now. She done pulled the plug on the man and then stole his money and credit cards.
Desperate. And the scary thing is, we talked about tariffs, we want to call them tariff taxes. A lot of people are going to come out here and get a lot more desperate.
Yeah. And I think that's part of the plan. Because, this guy remember when he was running, he talked about shooting looters or shoplifters down in the streets. So I think that that all plays into his diabolical mind and his plan. So you're right. People are going to get desperate. You can't, just a couple of months ago, we were talking about the price of eggs, but in reality, the price of everything.
Yeah.
It's tremendous. And now we got these tariff taxes, right? That is affecting everything. I had a double shot. No, it was a shot and a pour of Johnny Walker Blue yesterday. And I get the bill, and I'm thinking, is that part of the tariff? And the bartender like, yep.
See, I didn't even wait a minute, Stacy. Now I didn't even think about that, because I love me. A happy hour might be no longer happy.
It's not happy anymore. It's just an hour.
I didn't even think about my cocktail. We're already paying $20, $18 for a Cosmopolitan. You know what? I'm gonna have to curb my cocktail drinking out in public, because I'm not paying $30 and $40 for a cocktail, because I like to have 2, maybe 3.
And I fell right into the trap last night too, because I was eating. I was eating at the bar, and when you're alone, you do these things. And I'm out here by myself. Sinead's home, so I'm eating at the bar, and how does the bar tell me they don't have Johnny Walker Black or Macallan 12, right? But he says we got Johnny Walker Blue. I was like, that's odd. You got the top shelf, but you don't got. So anyway, they taxed me on
just
that.
in the chat, she said, "OMG, I got 2 drinkers on my team now." Shaking my head. I said, "Okay, for real, okay." So get the budget ready, because I can't afford a cocktail. Get the budget
I'm
ready.
like, wait a minute. He's talking about you want a double shot or a shot and a pour. I said, so the pour is not a shot, so I won't be charged. No, it's a pour. And I looked at that bill, and I've seen these other figures there. I'm like, and I said, where does this leave room for a tip? Because the tariff is
Right. See, I think that's such a great point, Stacy, is that it is going to impact the workers the most, because if I'm going to decide if I'm going to have an extra shot or give you a good tip,
I'm getting that shot. I'm sorry, yo. He said, Mike B said it had to be Johnny Walker Black. He said Stacy wanted a Johnny Walker Negro. That's right. Shoot. But you're right. That when you think about it, that's going to be a decision when you go to restaurants and stuff. And it's unfortunate, because I like to tip. I do like to tip, because I think that service workers are, they deserve, for the most part, they deserve a nice tip. And I'm not talking, people get $100 bill, thinking their bill is $100 and they leave them $2. That's just insane to me.
No, hey, don't say that. I something I'll let the family know. I used to run a comedy club. I used to run J. Anthony Brown's comedy club. And so I'm huge on tipping, because I understand, especially, I hate to say it, but us Black folks, we don't like to tip. Okay. we don't. Okay. I used to run a Black comedy club. We don't. But tipping is important. Guess who I got my biggest tip from?
Who's that?
Snoop Dogg.
Snoop.
He came, he did a comedy show with Red Grant at the comedy club. And so as the manager, I made sure he had everything, that he needed. He tipped me $300. So don't be talking about getting no tip. Hey, if you want to tip $300, $500, $1,000, go for it.
With the $300 also, did he like puff and try to give to you too? No, he didn't share. He didn't share.
But that did happen. That did happen when I was on the Tom Joyner. He was on the Tom Joyner cruise, and he came and he performed, and yeah, he was passing the blunt around. I didn't hit it though, because it was too many miles on it.
Well, and so
but he was passing it around.
Right. So I've never smoked, but I've never understood that part of it when they passing it around. It's like, excuse me. But there's a good point there too, Dr. Marilyn. They, and I see this too, and it just ticks me off. They already charge at some restaurants service charge. A lot of restaurants now, most restaurants now have that service charge, and they say it's not the gratuity for the server, it's just a service charge. What do you mean service charge? It's like Ticketmaster. You buy a ticket. I just bought Chris Brown tickets, right? And the service charge is as much as the ticket. I'm not going to see him. I didn't buy him for me, but the service charge is as much as the ticket.
Yeah, I saw service charges on the uptick during COVID-19. I mean, I saw them a little bit, and then it depends on what state you're in it too. Because we don't really do service charges that much here in California. Although, like I said, I did see it rise during COVID. But in other states, I see everything has a service charge. Airports, everything has a service charge.
Everything with a service charge. And that too, it takes away from the tip. And then now you got the Trump taxes, as Orange G says, welcome to the world of cheap food and beer. Now he says, because he says with Trump taxes, everybody's gonna be eating crawfish and drinking OE 800. But
I love a good crawfish broiled. Okay, that ain't a problem for me.
You need to go down to Louisiana and crash one of his.
As long as it has the potatoes, the sausage, and the corn.
Oh, okay.
You know.
But yeah, so now you got the Trump tax, the service charge, and the tip. It's why am I going out to eat now?
Right. A lot of mom and pops are going to be hit hard because the taxes of them to get their goods and services to serve us might not be a survival. They might not be able to sustain and survive that type of increase in prices.
I'm going back to peanut butter and jelly.
That's going to be $50 a jar.
No, tell me about it. I can't win.
Meanwhile, China and Japan is laughing at us because the devil is in the detail, and Donald Trump is not thinking about a lot of the materials and things that we use. The materials only come from China and Japan. So what are we going to do?
His Make America Great Again hats come from China. So listen. Oh, that's hilarious.
That is okay. Those are all Trump voters. Those are all Trump voters.
Let it marinate.
Yeah.
Okay, some Black history facts. I'll start with on this date in 1866, the Civil Rights Act of 1866 was passed, marking a significant step forward in protecting the rights and freedoms of Black Americans.
So
imagine that, 1866.
Yeah, and you think of, all the way to 1964, 65, this fight has never been won. It has always been fought. Never been won, always fought. And here we are again, fighting for the same old.
Yep.
To be Black in America.
Yeah, I mean, we just can't overcome. So, wow.
Maybe instead of we shall, when shall we?
When shall we overcome? Yeah. Oh man, the Civil Rights Act, 1866.
1866, 1964, 2025.
We got another Black history fact, Niele.
On this date in 1898, not too far from 1866, Paul Robeson, the internationally renowned singer, actor, and human rights activist, was born.
Wow.
In Princeton, New Jersey.
Oh, I didn't know he was born in Princeton. Wow. Okay. How about that? Scholar, athlete, actor, singer, global activist. Wow. Wow. That is awesome stuff. This is this is why the National Museum of African American History and Culture is so important. And this is why the Black press remains 198 years so important.
Mm-hmm.
So these facts, they may sound like little things or whatever, but they are important. Even the pop quiz is very important. And speaking of the pop quiz, the drum
Drum
roll for
roll.
the answer.
I will continue to use my voice.
And there it is. I wish we had a prize. Who was that called it out first? Stacy.
Who called it out first? Somebody did immediately say Oprah Winfrey. Let me see. I'm trying to go back and take a look because somebody immediately said Oprah.
I just want to thank everybody who supported that idea and the idea of free speech.
Oh, it was David Youngblood. It was David Youngblood.
All right, David Youngblood, we need a prize for you.
Yeah, he immediately said Oprah. So yeah.
So now if I ever meet Oprah Winfrey, I'm gonna say, hi, Miss Janet Lee.
And she's gonna keep walking.
No, she's gonna laugh. That's gonna be my inroad to conversation.
You think so?
You know, hey, I'm gonna use that. Thank you so much, Greer. If I ever meet her, she's gonna be like, she knows me. She knows.
I just want to share something.
Uh-oh.
That clip, you couldn't hear it because it's very low. But it was that I remember when that trial happened, it was the Mad Cow's lawsuit when she said I'd never eat a burger again. And it was run in Texas. And when she came out on that's probably when I, became a fan. I'm not saying I'm a fan now, but I'm not necessarily not a fan, but a fan of Oprah Winfrey. She had done so many things at that point. But when she came out, and she was being criticized too a lot by our folk at that time as well, right? Because she was like the first big mainstream, and she was a black woman, big black woman on top of that, right? When she came out in that courthouse and she said thank you, and before she left those steps, and you could see in her face that she was thinking about this. But she said, and she thanked everybody. She said, but I want to thank, I knew that God was going to be on my side because I come from a people, baby. I was a young person. I was so moved when she said that she acknowledged, because she was being criticized. Remember about her blackness back then. But she came out and she said on that courthouse in Texas, I come from a people who have fought for freedom of speech. And we won. And she said, we win, like basically, she said, we the ones that because freedom of speech, that was such for me as a young person at that time. I think I can't remember. Well, I was in my early years in college. And it was an extraordinary, for me, just representation of blackness, because you just did not see that in the mainstream, right? For a woman, a black woman with that level of power, that was a revolutionary act.
Okay, Oprah with the beef.
Yeah. But I mean, and I have to go back and look for clips, news clips at that time of, because I can't remember what the response was from black folks when she did that. But it was a very powerful speech.
Well,
I remember that though. I remember the trial. I do remember. I forgot about that. Yeah, but I do remember that as well.
Won a trial, but the thing that I remember the most was that speech when she came out and said that. It just meant a lot. You know what I'm saying? Because it was like, like rich people's problems. And, and remember too, Oprah being in town, and, it was a lot of criticism about even the privilege that she had. And that trial at that time shut down a lot of things because she couldn't do it. She was doing her show from Texas. Like all they did was give her more popularity, even though it was already great then, but give her more popularity, in Texas. It just grew her. And then for her to come out and before she left them steps, she thanked God and reminded them that she comes from a people baby. That was all I needed. That was
So-
all I. That changed my, because that changed a lot for me for Oprah at that time. So anyway,
Yeah.
that was my show.
Wow.
Sorry.
Something moved Greer.
That was back in
That
my.
all these years later, she's holding on to it.
Yeah, I've been holding on to. I mean, that's one of them. That's back in the. That's in the codes right there. Because my mama is a Black Panther with a fur coat, so you know how that goes.
So her mom is like a gangster, but she keeps it lady. She's a lady gangster.
No, I said she's a Black Panther. Let's keep it real. It's not. They were not gangsters.
They were not gangsters,
but they were gangster.
Right.
There you go.
But she's still like a good fur coat.
Wow. Well, there you have it. And Dr. Marilyn says she's always been true to herself. Oprah's always been true to herself. RG does mention that the AP has been reinstated to White House events after the judge rules government can't bar journalists. We'll see if that will stand.
We'll see if it'll stand, because we know that the Supreme Court is like in his pocket, and so we'll see if they let him in.
Yeah, the only way that changes if he just says, okay, just let him back in.
Yeah,
if he don't want them in, they're not going to be in. Y'all can believe that. Our Black-owned newspaper of the day is the St. Louis Argus. In 1912, the brothers Joseph Everett Mitchell and William Mitchell founded an insurance company newsletter for the Western Union Relief Association in St. Louis, Missouri. Over time, the publication grew both in scale and in reach, eventually becoming the St. Louis Argus newspaper. The Argus has been in publication now for more than 120 years and has served the African American community with unswerving dedication. It is now the oldest continuously operating Black-owned business west of the Mississippi River. Wow. And that building looks like a typical Black-owned newspaper building. Talk about keeping it real. And I know that's an older picture, but it's like real, authentic, and unapologetically Black.
Love
you
it.
can go on St. Louis Argus News.com and check out the latest from St. Louis. They got some good stuff over there in St. Louis news-wise. So check them out, Niele.
And I heard St. Louis has great barbecue.
Yes, that's what I heard too. Although I have never really gone and stayed in St. Louis. It's always been a place where I passed through. And because I'm from New York, I've stopped in St. Louis just to get White Castles.
Okay, I do it in Chicago for White Castles, but I definitely want to try some St. Louis barbecue, and I'm sure that the Black Press in St. Louis could give us some great recommendations.
There you go.
Just a side note. But for news from St. Louis, California, Washington, D.C., and all in between, if you want to know the Black perspective, if you want to read stories from Stacy, April D. Bryan, Lauren, head on over to BlackPressUSA.com. We keep you updated with what's impacting the Black experience 24/7. So that's BlackPressUSA.com.
That's right. And check us out again tomorrow when we bring you some more headlines and hot topics on Let It Be Known. Thanks for watching.